Perfect. I want to thank you for having me here today. Like Nicole read I have worked many years in a senior serving organization using the marketing skills that I have learned through the past 25 years. And I'm excited to share what I've learned with you today. Hopefully I get your wheels spinning, and through the conversation and the information, you have a couple ideas at the end of this that you can implement or look into for your organization. One thing that I have found through my 25 years of marketing is marketing really is based on using different channels to deliver your brand message to the right audience at the right time to deliver that real impact. So that's a couple of the things I'm going to be going over today, the different marketing channels and how you can use those. And if you have any questions as we go through these slides, please feel free to interrupt me, have me stop, and then we can go over your questions. Again, I'm hoping at the end of this, you have some tidbits of information that can help you move your marketing program forward for 2021 and into 22. So just to go a little bit, little information about Strategic Factory. Strategic Factory has been in business for over 20 years. It started as the owner started as a small commercial printer. And strategically over the years, as he started as that small printer, he saw a lot of his clients come to him and they had to go to multiple different vendors and agencies to get something done for their marketing program. So over the years, Strategic Factory has had significant intentional growth. We serve customers across the United States, and that growth is really based upon becoming the one-stop shop for our customers. So that way, it really solves that pain point of having to coordinate marketing efforts across multiple vendors and multiple agencies. Strategic Factory is a family-owned and operated business. We have 3 locations and in Maryland, and we have over 60,000 square feet of manufacturing and office space. As I said, Strategic Factory grew to become that one-stop shop for everyone. So that way, your marketing efforts can be done, and it's really done at one place instead of having to coordinate across multiple shops and agencies to really save you time. And as we've grown, we have everything in-house from print to direct mail and digitally enhanced direct mail, signage, printed materials, anything from postcards to a full brochure to anything in between or beyond, branded apparel, promotional products, creative services, and marketing and digital services. As I said earlier, today we're really going to dive down into what those elements of a successful marketing plan are and how to use those marketing strategies to implement that plan. The first thing is really your brand. Your brand is the defining piece of your organization, and that's where all marketing starts from. With brand, when you develop your brand, you want to develop that in a way that your communications, both internal and external, are delivered and perceived by the market based on how your brand, style guide, and foundation is. So as we go through these slides and maybe beyond, if you have any questions, let me know. Think about, one, does your brand really differentiate you from the marketplace and your competitors in that marketplace? And does your brand and communication really evoke the emotions that you want customers to associate with your company, your brand, your services, and your products? Your brand is really the first thing that's communicated to customers. It's important that when you develop your internal and external communications and marketing strategies and plans, that they are very consistent and represent what your brand is defined. This includes everything from, it's not just a logo. This includes your logo, your colors, the language, and the photography and the tone of the language. And what I mean by that is some companies are very conversational in their language and in their writing. Other companies are more what I call buttoned up. They're more very matter of fact, and that really plays into how you represent your brand and is part of your brand. And there's one thing on this slide I want to read, and I think it's one of the most important things to understand about your brand. Every company has a brand, and if it is not communicated consistently in the marketplace from both your marketing efforts and your employees, then customers will define your brand based on their own experiences and perceptions. So it's very important to make sure that your brand is established and that it is communicated consistently across all your marketing and communication efforts. Here's an example of a brand for Athlon. When you consider your brand, think of everything from logos, brand colors, marketing collateral, what I call identity materials, which is your letterhead, your business cards, your signage, and your stationery, as well as the signage on your building, as well as in your office, your website, any type of ads that you run, as well as if you have a fleet of vehicles, is that representing your brand and who you are? If you're sitting here and you're thinking, well, when I put out my marketing pieces or communication or brand, it's not consistent, it's not telling that consistent story, then it might be time for a brand refresh. And what that really is really taking a look at your brand of where you are today and where you want to be in the future. And the goal of that refresh is really to define your brand style guide, so that in the future, both your internal and external communication can be consistent. And that style guide can be used by both your team members and your agencies and external vendors that are building materials for you for your marketing efforts.
Hey, Chris, this is Tracy. I just had a quick question.
Sure.
And a comment too. So Nikki, if you're still on, one of the things that I think is so important when you are looking at a logo, and I always think of the Alzheimer's Association because there's often a bigger meaning in a company's logo. But a great question to take back to your employees is, do your employees know what your logo means? Sometimes a logo is just a logo. It's something that catches the eye and it looks really great on paper. I see Nikki nodding. But the Alzheimer's Association has a really powerful logo that has great meaning behind it. Do you mind sharing that real quickly? I just think it's such a great opportunity, especially with social media, which Chris, I know you're going to talk about for us soon, that if you can also rely on your visual. So Nikki, do you mind sharing just briefly what yours mean?
Yeah, and I think most of you probably know what our logo looks like, and I actually think it's hidden in the back of my room. So it's basically the joining of people in science is what that represents, and there is a an explanation that shows it sort of represents a head in a beaker, basically. And I have to say that it took me about a year working there before I understood that. So thank you for pointing that out. And I'm glad I knew the answer, Tracy.
I would have had your back otherwise. But it's one of those things, though, that when you think about your employees are your marketers.
Yep.
You know, so Chris and I were talking about this offline, that does your organization, do your employees have a really solid understanding of what your company mission is and why your logo looks the way it does? So just something to take away from this. There could be bigger meaning behind your organization's logo. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. And Tracy, thank you. And one thing that, as you bring up employees, like you said, they are very, very important. They're the front line of really representing a company's brand and mission. And what I liked, I was talking to Tracy the other day, what I was referring to, do the employees know that 5-minute elevator pitch? And what I mean by that is, let's say they're in a building and they're in an elevator and someone steps on and they're like, "Hi, how are you? What do you do? And what business do you work for?" Your employees can convey what the organization stands for, what their mission is, and that can be done in like 5 minutes or less. That is very, very important for your brand and for your organization, that your employees are very important on representing who you are and what you do. Okay. The next thing we're going to go into, and this is the building of the marketing tactics. It's what is integrated marketing and why is it important? And many of you may have heard integrated marketing, confluent marketing, or omni-channel marketing. It's pretty much the same thing. And what does it mean? It's an effective campaign-based marketing approach that starts with really understanding your prospects and your customers and utilizing both traditional and digital marketing channels to provide a cohesive experience, delivering the content at the right time to the right audience that delivers real impact. And when I say traditional media versus digital media, traditional media is anything, it's the print, it's the radio, it's the TV. Digital strategies is more of the social media, the Google AdWords, the SEO, it's what's doing online. Integrated marketing has a lot of different benefits. It helps support your brand. It helps differentiate you in the marketplace from your competitors. It really supports customer acquisition and retention and can help support revenue growth. Also, a very important part of integrated marketing is managing your digital reputation online. And that really is your online reviews, social media feedback that you receive. And integrated marketing, if done right, will really set your organization apart from your competitors. And part of, on the slide here, integrated media, we're going to go over a lot of these today, but I'll go through these real quick. First thing is social media marketing, content marketing, reputation management is very important. Direct mail, development of your sales materials, your email marketing, your paid advertising, and your website and your SEO, which is search engine optimization. Let's first talk about your website presence, which is your digital calling card and primary source of information. And we're going to go over why your website is very important. prior to COVID, and now even more during COVID and as we come out of it, people tend to go online to research your company and your product and services prior to ever reaching out to you. They want to do their own intel on their own time to learn more about you before they feel comfortable reaching out. What they're doing is, when I started in marketing many years ago, and I have to admit it was prior to the internet marketing, people would get a newspaper ad or get a print ad, and it would have information and a phone number, and they call and get more information. That's not the way the world works now. People are going on, they're doing their research, they're looking at your website, they're Googling you and seeing what comes up. They're going to social media to see what people are saying about your organization in the reviews. And they're also seeing your social media to say, okay, what are you posting organically that I can try to garner more about who you are, what your mission is, and how others are perceiving you. That's really your brand. So they're doing that prior to ever even reaching out. And we have a statistic here that I want to point out is with the e-commerce foundation, it says that 88% of consumers will research a product before they purchase online or in a store. So I want to stop there. That's 88%. So that is the lion's share of your customers and prospects researching you before.
Yeah, I know it's on there because they presented it on legal size.
So I want to make sure that that is something that we call out here, and maintaining your online presence because of that is critical. One thing about websites, and one thing I find sometimes is websites should have relevant information and always be kept up to date. It's a living and breathing thing. It's not a set and forget strategy that I built it today, I don't have to touch it for another 5 years. Websites, when they're developed, they should be developed with the user in mind, meaning consider how the prospect or customer is going to view your site. What information can you provide that answers the questions that they have and why they're coming to your site? And then how do you want them to learn about you and your services? And what actions do you want them to take? What's the next step you want them to take, such as filling out a form or calling you or downloading some information? You want them to come to your website, learn about you, and take that next step. With websites, it is I want to say a misconception that it is a monumental haul to develop a website. It's a daunting task. It's expensive and takes a lot of time. There are so many more innovative approaches today that it can be done in a relatively short amount of time. It's not going to be done overnight, of course, but a relatively short amount of time. It's very affordable and it's very effective, and it's what customers are expecting in today's world. Are there any questions on that before I move on to SEO?
Chris, this is Tracy again. One of the things that I find, especially in the last few years, is sometimes calls to action are referred to as CTAs. Yep. in literature and whatnot. And I just wanted to point that out because there's a lot of language that we use now in digital marketing that frankly didn't exist even probably 7 years ago, maybe 7 or 10 years ago. But often you will see that now, and a call to action could be very specific to your field. So, after this presentation, if these are questions that you may have, well, this is what my industry is. What is a really good call to action? What might that look like? That's something we can always talk about offline, but because it isn't always about touring or scheduling an appointment. And I think in light of COVID, many of us on this meeting have found that our traditional calls to action don't exist anymore. So,
exactly.
We can't give tours at this moment at Stella. So there are different things that we are prompting, our users to do. So I just wanted to jump in and share that this is also an opportunity to think of different ways to entice action from your consumer.
Right. And like you said, during before COVID, it was come in and tour or schedule an appointment. Those have really flipped to virtual tours, virtual appointments. But also we found in the senior serving organization, seniors are at home or at their residence, and you've got their captive audience. Deliver them information that they can read. What information can you provide to them that they can garner online, either by downloadable or attachment or something? So instead of them not being able to come in and have an appointment, really provide them information that answers a lot of the questions they have. To then what happens is it piques their interest and still works them through that comfort level of taking the next step. So when it is time and we can start coming into the office or having tours and so forth, they're primed and ready to take that next step. So now that we talked about websites, I want to talk about SEO, which is search engine optimization. And what this basically is a marketing strategy to ensure that your website is searchable by search engines such as Google and Bing. Some of the benefits of SEO, if done right, it improves your SEO rankings, meaning that when you do it, Google will rank you higher in the search results so that when people are looking for products or services or terms that are related to yours, you will show up in those results. It reduces your dependency on paid search, which is, as the title says, it's paid advertising. It increases traffic to your website, which is targeted and relevant to your product and services. And there's also benefits for your branding that SEO can help with. And one of the biggest things with SEO, it is a inbound marketing strategy, meaning that when customers and prospects are searching for, like I said, terms or products and services similar to yours, you come up in that search result. So that way you're in front of that prospect. And one thing with SEO, especially when working through, everyone has budget constraints. And SEO, content marketing are one of the first things that go, because it's not that immediate impact that you see. SEO, when you look at that, is extremely important in your marketing program. It is more of a marathon run than a sprint. It builds up over time, and you will see those benefits from SEO. And especially when you tie SEO and paid search marketing together, it's cyclical and they help each other. And we'll go into paid search next. But before I move on, does anyone have any questions about SEO? No? Okay. So for paid advertising, you know how I just referred to SEO as that marathon? Paid advertising, which is what you pay on Google, Bing, you also can use social media and do paid advertising there. It's really considered the sprint. You're paying to have your organization's marketing or ads show up in the search engine results when someone is searching for your company specifically or products and services you deliver. paid advertising includes both traditional media and digital media. It's very cost effective if done correctly. You can optimize it pretty quickly, especially digital marketing, so that way you can read your results pretty much real time and optimize off of those metrics to continuously improve your program. It provides faster results than SEO. Remember, I said it's the sprint and SEO is the marathon. And it's a method where, well, it's very critical, especially now that we're in COVID, even more critical that it's part of your marketing program, because it gets you in front of your prospects and your customers, so that they can see your brand, they can see your products, and they can see your services. And you're there first and foremost in the results.
Chris, it's Tracy again. I'm sorry, I have so many questions.
Okay.
So one of the things that that Nikki and I were actually talking about recently was how affordable some paid advertising is. And I think it's important for everyone to know that there are options that are very affordable. We have a lot of small businesses that are on this Zoom today. And, some are, one person shows, right? So, one of the things that we have found, even here at Stella, that have been successful are Facebook ads.
Yes.
Are you going to talk about that later, or is this a good time to bring that up?
I'm going to talk about that later.
Okay, I'm probably jumping ahead. Okay.
No, you're fine.
I just can't help myself. I love all this. I can't help it. All right. Thanks, Chris.
No problem. It's a good point that you talk about that, because I'm talking about traditional and digital marketing channels. And it's the age-old thing that traditional media typically on the forefront, when you see that bill, costs more. But the ROI on that, the return on investment, is higher. So you're putting more forward, but you're getting a ROI. So in the end, you really have to look to see digital marketing is typically less expensive, but the ROI is a little bit less than traditional. So you really have to look at what you're spending and your metrics to see what works best for your organization. And it's not I'm going to try it once and be done. You really have to try it, see what the results are, and improve upon it. One thing that I want to, maybe it's a good story here. Years and years ago, I was at a company where I had a ad run in newspapers across the country, and it was about a $300,000 ad run, and it hit the same week as 9/11, and that was just a sad day and week in our history. And if I had just looked, or the company had just looked at, these are the results of this advertising run during that time, and didn't take the external factors that were happening in the world or also in the sector and so forth, it would have been a mistake to say, okay, we're never running there again. What we did is we really learned from that. And it, like I said, it was a tragic day, tragic time in our history. We turned that around, and we felt, this is something that we have to do something and help with. So in the organization, we were promoting someone to submit some information. Anyone that submitted their information, we let them choose what organization that their donation, we were going to do a donation to a certain amount of organizations, and they could choose where to donate. So again, that's something we really turned that around to be a humanistic approach on helping others. But if we had just looked at those results in that small funnel of, this is what we paid, this is the return, and not take anything that was happening in the world, it wouldn't have given the true story of what happened during that time frame for that ad run. So that's where I'm saying it's very important when you do a placement, whether it's digital or traditional media, look at the results, but don't look at the results in a vacuum. Look and see what's happening in your sector, what's happening in the world that day. And that very well may be the impact on your ROI. And take that into consideration for that whole story. So I hope that that side tangent there helped a little bit. But I wanted to make sure that when you're reading results, you're looking at the whole picture, not just this is the number on the page. Does that make sense? Okay. The next thing we're going to go into is really content marketing. And you use content marketing to educate your customers on who you are, what you do, what services you provide. And if done correctly, it really positions your organization and you as the subject matter experts in the field. So that way, what happens is prospects start building that trust and that loyalty into you and your brand. So they're going to start reaching out and coming and seeing what you're saying. Some examples of content marketing could be video, blogs, white papers, case studies, any type of downloadable that they can download and read is part of your content marketing strategy. I discussed and briefly touched upon reputation management a little bit earlier when we talked about the whole integrated marketing programs that you can use. And I want to make sure that I stress enough that reputation management should be a very important part of your marketing strategy and should not be overlooked. Like I said earlier, customers and prospects have visibility into your online reviews, both from your current customers, past customers, as well as your employees. So make sure that you're managing your digital reputation. Monitor and respond to online reviews. I often find that sometimes people or organizations get a bad review and they go in and delete it right away. Well, that doesn't solve the problem. You're not answering that person's challenge that they were having. What I have found that is actually stronger, can be stronger than a positive review, is leaving that online review there, but making sure you respond to it in a very quick manner and put your best foot forward with the customer service. Acknowledge that they had a problem. Ask them to reach out to you. How can you help them solve their problem? And when other people see that you're engaging not only with positive reviews, but negative reviews and trying to help them, that's part of your brand. And people build their perception of your brand based on that. And they're seeing that you're trying to help and you're trying to engage and solve that problem for someone. So again, I want to stress that it's very important to manage your reputation in the marketplace. Some benefits of good online reputation. Like I said, you have less of a risk of reputation damage. You attract better talent. If people go onto the job boards and see positive reviews and they go look at social media and see everything that's happening and your storyboards, that's going to attract better talent because someone wants to be part of that. What that does is it builds visibility and credibility into your brand, which then also builds the trust and loyalty of your brand. all that together helps support the profit and the revenue of the organization. Now let's chat a little bit about email marketing. So email marketing is a great way to engage several segments of your list, or of your audience. First, it's your prospects that have signed up to receive information from you. It's your current customers, and it's also your elapsed or past customers. It's a great way to engage each one of those segments using email. And it's important to build a strategy of what you're going to convey, when you're going to convey it, or the cadence to convey it to what target audience. So what you provide information to a prospect may be something totally different than information that you provide to an elapsed customer or someone that you want to engage again because they haven't used your services in a while. I do want to stress that when delivering email through a email service provider, it is important to make sure those email addresses are opted in. There are laws against spamming and sending unsolicited email out through bulk email. So make sure that you have opt-in language on your email signups, so that way people know that they're going to receive email from you. Email should also, when you're delivering that bulk email, should have a opt-out, and that's typical, and it's part of all email service providers, I would say templates or any of their automation software that they have now. Email marketing, there's a couple different benefits. One, you stay top of mind. You can provide tidbits of information such as what's going on at your organization, any type like content marketing. You can push out your blogs, a newsletter, any type of information that will engage them. It's very easy to measure. You can, like I said, segment out your list so you're targeting those segments with relevant information. It does increase traffic to your website. When you send an email, and let's say your blogs are on your website, and you have the opening couple of sentences of your blog, and then there's a call to action that clicks through that says something like read the rest of the blog. It takes them to your website. So then now they're on your website to then look at more information. It's extremely easy to personalize, and it's really a low barrier of entry to gain that person's email address. Now, the next thing, and Tracy, I know that you had said on our call and a little bit earlier, social media. So we want to spend some time on social media. And I would equate or think of social media as your PR channel where everything is newsworthy. So social media management is much more important than you think. Social media, like I said, helps build your brand awareness, helps your organization shape the conversation about your business. Let me repeat that. It helps the company shape the conversation, which goes back into really supporting the brand and mission of the company. It's another channel that you can expand to for your marketing efforts. And you can engage your customers and your prospects in two different ways with social media. One is organic and one is paid advertising. So organic advertising is, I'm sure you've seen, it's the stories, it's the heartfelt stories, it's the memes, it's really talking about your customers, as well as if you have employee highlights, put them on social media. People want to see what is happening in your organization with both your customers as well as your employees. They are vital to the support of your organization, and it's a great way to highlight your employees and the good things that they're doing. Now, the other piece of that is paid advertising. So you have organic, that's free, and you post those newsworthy stories, you can post your blogs, anything like that. Then there's the paid advertising. And think of the paid advertising similar to what you do on Google and Bing. So you are paying to show your ad to a targeted audience. And with paid advertising, there's a couple ways to do it on social media. One method is very similar to Google, which is AdWords, and then Bing advertising, is that you have your ad and it directs a person to either a landing page or your website to gain more information. There is another way that you can use social media advertising on Facebook in particular, and it's called a lead form. So what that is your ad shows, and instead of that ad, if someone clicks on it, that it takes them to either your landing page or your website. It takes you to a form that is on Facebook that the person fills up the form, they click submit, and they keep on going about their business on their Facebook page. It is a lot less intrusive to their actions that they're taking on Facebook. But there's a good and bad about that. So since it's very, very easy to say, click, I'm filling out my information, I'm back to my business, you will get leads that are not as warmed up or as qualified as someone who would be going off the Facebook, filling out a form, or looking at your website. They are very cost effective. You will find leads that are valuable that come from that lead form because you are in delivering the ads in the format that they're used to, and you're not interrupting their actions that they're taking on Facebook. So my recommendation would be to try both methods and really measure the return on investment on both the lead form type of ad and the ads that go to your website or landing page, and see what works best for your organization. You may get 3 times the number of leads on a lead form type of ad than you would on someone going off to fill out a form on your website or landing page. But in the end, the return on investment, you may find that one of those performs better. So I want to stop there and make sure that I answer any questions or go into more detail on social media, because I know that was something of interest for everyone.
I know I have questions because I always have questions about social media. I feel so badly that I'm monopolizing this, but so a couple things. When it comes to, social media now has expanded so much. It used to really just be Facebook. Facebook a number of years ago surpassed Google as the primary way that people search for information. I think we all say, oh, I'll Google that. But shockingly, Facebook still, I believe, is the #1 search engine because people want organic content. They don't necessarily want that curated, overly proofed, overly, stuff that's on our website, which that's important too, of course. But now when it comes to social media strategy, and this is one of the things that Chris and I were talking about the other day, it is a science. So now that you have Facebook, you have LinkedIn, you may use Instagram, you might use Twitter. But for the purposes of our groups, I think all of us primarily use Facebook and LinkedIn. So one of the things that that I really try to measure, both for Gain and for Stella, is when should I post? So I might have something really exciting that I want to share, and it's a Saturday afternoon. Well, I've learned my lesson that posting something on LinkedIn on a Saturday afternoon is not going to be seen ever. No one, everyone's hopefully off work. You're not looking at LinkedIn. That's your professional page. But maybe Facebook.
Yep.
You know, Chris, do you have any tips for us? Because that's one of the things that on the board we've been talking about a lot is you have that great story to share. You have that colleague spotlight. You have a really just great moment that, especially in light of COVID, you want to share. When should we share it? So if you can talk a little bit about Facebook and LinkedIn, especially, and everybody else, please jump in if there's another social media forum that you want to dive into, but those are the two that I think would be most helpful. When should we post? And any tips on, you know, should it have a picture? Should it have a visual of some kind? Should it just be words? What do you think?
The biggest thing is, I know here at Strategic Factory, we have found that posting from like 10 to 11 and then 1 to 2 or 3 o'clock, really during the weekdays, mostly Tuesday through Thursday, work best for us. That's for our audience and in our industry. Every industry is different. But on Sprout Social, there's some key things. Sprout Social is basically an aggregator for that you can use to manage your social media and push your information out. It really shows on there that, let me get my stuff, posting from Wednesday and Thursday from 10 to 2 on weekdays on Facebook is one of their recommendations, that they have seen the highest engagement. But like I said, it really depends on your audience and when they're using these platforms. Like you said on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a professional network. So I would see engagement on that is going to be lower on the weekends, because people check in on the weekends, people work on the weekends, but they're typically, if they have a choice of going to LinkedIn, which is a professional network, or going to Facebook and seeing, hey, what's everyone doing? They're going to go to Facebook. So I would really say the biggest thing is test. Keep track of when your biggest engagement is for your posts, and then really build your program around that time frame and those days. With respect to copy versus images, I think you can have a little bit of both, but I would more steer towards images, because that is engaging. When someone's going through their feed, an image is going to catch them, where if it's just words, it's not going to catch them.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense.
Can I jump in here? I was fortunate enough to be able to attend a social media specific presentation through my national association. And all of those comments kind of match up with what they said. Definitely have photos, but always make sure you're hashtagging as well. Hashtagging is really, really important. And so for us, any post I do, I hashtag NASM, I hashtag senior move management, I hashtag moving, downsizing, you know, all of those keywords, because that'll bring you up when people search for those things. The other thing they recommended is utilize the scheduled Facebook posts. So I set aside time on Mondays and I schedule my Facebook posts out so that I don't have to worry about doing it on a daily basis. And the third thing was your posts, they're saying on average 3 posts a week will keep you engaged with people. And so your posts, as you schedule them, could be member spotlight or, you know, employee spotlight. It could be a client feedback. just generic, not generic, but informational, like, you know, here's the 5 tips of downsizing. And then also like national holidays. If you can't think of a third post for a week, look at the national holiday and somehow tie that into your stuff. I thought those were really fun tips and tricks on social media, and I try to follow it, and my engagement has definitely increased.
Perfect. Perfect.
Can I jump in?
As a sidebar too, you know, if you're not sure, you know, what hashtags you should be using, you know, definitely ask, you know, those that are above you in your organization, because they may have something that they want you to use. But also see what others are using. You know, we all work together in our respective industries. And Chris, I'm sorry that I'm jumping in again, but you know, there are just different ways. And again, this costs nothing. And if someone does search, you will come up more often, just like Heather said. And, you know, definitely do your research. I mean, I don't like to say competition, because I think we all honestly help each other. We always have, especially in this group. But don't hesitate to reach out to one another and find out, hey, what time of day worked for you? The other thing, Chris, that I want you to focus on, sometimes those of us that do a lot of social media marketing, we're so used to it that we just assume everybody knows what we're saying. So when we talk about engagement and understanding when certain posts had more engagement, at one of our, I can't remember which game meeting it was now, because it all runs together sometimes, but I had shown everyone on my screen some of our impressions and engagement, and you know, how our page views went up and our likes went up and our shares went up. So if you are essentially an administrator for your organization's Facebook account, you have access to all of that. If you're not, ask whoever is, and they can look at that for you. For your personal and professional LinkedIn pages, if you go back to your LinkedIn post, it'll actually tell you how many views it had. So just because someone didn't like it, that's okay. But it could be that you had 450 views and another one only had 100. So keep in mind, you know, what time of day and what the content looked like for the ones that had a little bit more visibility. I know that's how I've tried to shift things for us here with Gain. It's definitely trial and error. There's no perfect formula, but have fun with it though. After this meeting, I really want everyone to challenge themselves to go back and look at your personal LinkedIn pages and see if your company can give you some idea of how your posts are doing. It's actually really fun to play around with it.
It is.
And then Tracy, you made a very, very good point, and I want to make sure that I elaborate on that some, is people on social media, it's okay to have a white paper or so forth there and pitch it, but make sure that your posts are what I consider authentic posts. Make sure that if you're using video that and it's of an employee and they're doing something well, it's okay that it's taken from your phone. It's okay that it's posted. People want to see that authentic representation of what your clientele is, what your employees are doing. If it's polished way too much, they're not going. Social media is not the place for it. I don't know how many times when we're talking about videos and blogs, you want it to be an authentic representation of what your company stands for, your customers, your employees. If it's too polished, it's actually going to take away from the trust factor.
Chris, can I throw an example in here? Because I have the perfect example for what you're talking about.
Sure.
We took a video of one of my employees. We help people downsize and move, right? And so one of my employees took one of the lampshades, one of the big lampshades that had all the fringe hanging down, and put it on her head and was dancing around. And we took a video of that. That's not professional by any means, but it was indicating how fun and stress-free what we do can be, and that we can have fun on our job. And that was probably one of our best posts that we've had. And I love it. So
yes,
example.
I am so guilty of wanting things to look really polished. So I need to take a lesson from this. because it's hard when you're someone who is, and I know a lot of other people on this meeting can relate, when you are representing a larger organization, I think you feel sometimes an obligation to, okay, it needs to be professional. It needs to look the best that it can look. And I am super guilty of that. So I appreciate that tip that it really is about showing the humanity and maybe the vulnerability and the fun in your organizations, and not just how reputable and consistent you are. You know, sometimes I tend to gear towards the more conservative stuff. So that's a really good lesson. Heather, thank you for sharing that, by the way, because I need to remember that for me. I'm going to hold you accountable for that, please.
There you go.
Remind me to have some fun.
Yeah.
Just think about how much more video you can get from using just your phone than trying to set up a photo shoot or video shoot, and how much cost savings you can make by just using this. And this is what people want. They want the authentic self of the brand and of the people. And that really speaks to the mission and the culture of the community, of the company.
Yeah.
So Chris, I have another question about social that comes up a lot, and I've seen a lot of conflicting information about it, which is how often you should post. So I want to make sure, that everyone heard what times of day are generally recommended. Of course, industry specific at times, but those tend to be pretty tried and true. But how often? So let's talk about LinkedIn first. So it's your personal, LinkedIn page. It's your professional brand. We talked about generally Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are probably the best days to post, but how often should you post?
That goes to, I know on Facebook, it should be around 3 times a week. But with that said, I want to say, if you are sitting here saying there is no way I can do 3 posts a week, then that's okay. Then say, okay, what can I do a week? Or what can I do a month? The worst thing to do is go into this on Facebook and say, I'm going to post 3 times a week, and you do it for 2 weeks and then drop off. Because what's going to happen is people are going to see that feed and see, okay, there's activity, and then there's nothing. So there are some guidelines, but what I would say is look at your bandwidth and your team's bandwidth and see what is realistic to keep that momentum and to keep it consistent, because it is great to post 3 times a week. But if after 2-3 weeks it drops off, that's not serving anyone well, and it's actually hurting you. So there are some guidelines, but I don't want to have people feel like I can't do that because I don't have the time to do it. Does that help?
Yeah, because that's something that I've always struggled with. Is I've always wanted our content, to be meaningful and authentic and not forced. And if I start to feel like I don't really have, I could post something, but it wouldn't feel right. I don't want to post just to post. So, I have set a very conservative goal, both especially for gain at just, once a week. Once a week we'll have some, whether it's a member spotlight or we're featuring our next member meeting, it's something meaningful and not just getting lost in translation. But I've also heard about that 3-day-a-week recommendation, and I think that's a really good goal to have. But I know that for a lot of us on this meeting, it's not really realistic right now. Maybe after, someday when we're through this pandemic, we're going to be out and about more. We'll see each other more. We'll have different fun content to share again. I think that is a struggle during COVID, is to develop content that feels meaningful and is uplifting. Because this has been a hard year, for a lot of us.
With that, I want to just jump in and ask if Julie Chamara with Elegant Restorations, they've had a couple of posts that have had great engagement. And I just wanted to ask if Julie would mind sharing 1 or 2. I remember the one in particular about a family they helped as a group to finish a job. Julie?
Thanks, Nikki. Yeah, it's interesting. We post, we do at a minimum at least once a week. We try to do more. This week is I have 2 going out, but the post that Nikki's referring to is we helped a family in need. And so we find that our post about helping in our community, whether we're sponsoring something or whether we're involved in a charity, those get really large engagements. And we're also part of the Miracle League here in Harford County. So it's a handicap accessible ball field. The family that we helped actually had a child who has shaken baby syndrome. And so he had a traumatic brain injury at 6 months. So he's really lost. So everything just stopped for the family, and they were in the middle of a kitchen remodel. And as soon as we heard about it, we're like, we need to give back. And so we went ahead and did that and helped them put their kitchen back in place. We were supposed to do it this time last year, but because of COVID, it stopped. So it was like a whole nother year. So it was good to help, but that's some of the things that we found. We also try to use our authentic pictures. So I try not to use pictures that are from a download from a website anywhere. I'm going out, I'm taking pictures, and I'm using those because that's really helpful. And then with hashtags, I know on LinkedIn, the recommendation's no more than 3 hashtags. I don't know about Facebook, but then people just get hashtagged out when you have a whole bunch of hashtags, and it affects your algorithms. And I'm sure you're seeing it even on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Those algorithms, you might see it in your feed one day, and then 5 days later, somebody else is seeing it.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how it shows up in each person's feed.
Yeah. And I like to throw in there too, if you're struggling to find that second or third post for the week, one of the things I do often is I'll go to one of our groups, Gain, or some of the other member groups that I'm a member of, and find something that I think is helpful or that resonates, and just reshare it. Because not only does that give me another post, but it also links my people back to my groups and my organizations and the things they're doing well. So Julie, I'm going to look for your post here soon and repost it, because that's what we can do for each other as well.
Right.
And I add just a tiny thought. I don't see it. Can you all hear me? Carol Leinhard?
Uh-huh.
Yes,
I
Carol.
think there's something to be said for not doing too many posts, because one of the things that I find happening is if there's a business that communicates with me and they're communicating like every day, like political advertising. If you gave money to a candidate, they're after you. Well, what ends up happening with me is I get sick of seeing it. And so I just go in and I unsubscribe. So I kind of like the idea for a small business of maybe only doing twice a week, because then when they see you, it really means something. So I don't think people should feel as though, oh my God, if I don't do 3 times a week, I haven't done my job. Right. I think, maybe 1 post a week or possibly 2 that are well-meaning and engaging would be much better than to feel yourself tied to 3 times a week.
Perfect.
Good point.
Yes, very good point there.
I had a quick question. I know obviously we're talking about the big players in social media, but recently I'm seeing some more posts related to senior activity on Nextdoor. What are your thoughts on that platform?
We do here, we don't use that platform. Tracy, do you use that platform?
We don't. Amy, do you mind sharing with everybody what that is? Because it's not something we've used here. I am hearing more and more chatter about it, but what are you seeing?
Yeah, so just recently, I guess I joined Nextdoor like maybe a year ago, something like that, just because at the time I was looking at all sorts of different opportunities, but I'm just seeing many more posts. So it's very geographically based. So you put in what your neighborhood or neighborhood, so you can do a couple different neighborhoods, and they have it segmented into different categories, lots of different topics such as hobbies, gardening, etc. But then they also have, they just started like a networking resource division with regards to, you know, people asking, I'm looking for a realtor, I'm looking for this. There seem to be recently a lot of posts that are coming through. I'm on the senior community one. A lot of posts coming through for people looking for caregivers for their loved ones, or how, you know, what are your thoughts on home health, or what are your thoughts on placement? So just recently, I'm starting to see more of that sort of conversation and chatter. It's very, very basic compared to the other social media platforms. So I just, you know, it's a newer one that I feel like people that aren't on Facebook might find more comfort in this, because it's not to that extent, you know what I mean? So anyway, I was just curious if you had any thoughts on it, because I feel like it's relatively new, but it's starting to be a little bit, I'm just starting to see a little bit more.
It's funny, Amy, because I had no idea. I mean, I had heard of it and thought that it was one thing, and what you just described, it's completely different than what I thought it was. So thank you for sharing that too. You know, again, I think back to when, you know, LinkedIn especially started, and it was just, it wasn't really something that you wasted a lot of time with. And now I feel like I spend more time there than I do anywhere else, just for my purposes. So don't be at all surprised if Nextdoor is something that in a year, you know, we end up, you know, all of us are using it because we find great value in it. That's, I think, one of the fun things about, you know, social media, and why I get so excited about talking about branding. You know, so Chris, I appreciate that you heard me when I said I really wanted to give a full, well-rounded view of all this, because if your website isn't what it needs to be, but your social media is, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. You know, everything needs to, you know, feel very cohesive. And, you know, not everyone knows what SEO means. Not everyone knows what a call to action is. And, you know, really breaking down to the basics. And again, especially in light of COVID, we're relying on these forums. Did everybody know what Zoom was, you know, prior to March of last year? Probably not. You know, so I think that these conversations are just so important. You know, a landing page, you know, I can't see everybody's faces, but I don't know that everyone here knows what a landing page is. You know, that you can have a very specific, you know, page of your website, so to speak, that maybe a Facebook ad drives that person to, versus just going right to your website and they have to navigate that to find what they need. You know, speaking on behalf of what I do here at Stella, you know, because we do so many things, people get lost sometimes on our website. And they'll just get frustrated and move on because they may not be able to find what they need. So we utilize landing pages quite a lot in healthcare, you know. So anyway, this is exactly what I was, you know, hoping for, was one, for all of us to understand what our digital presence means and why it's so important, and some of the low-hanging fruit that we can all take advantage of to at least get started if we haven't. I know Nikki's keeping track of the time, but for the others on the call, or Zoom meeting, I should say, any other just success stories, questions, challenges that they've had with social that we can ask Chris?
No.
And I do think that,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do think this could lead into an entire another discussion, and this may be an opportunity that we create just an ad hoc meeting for anybody who wants to come and talk social media, and a little more informally share our successes and our struggles. And I would love to actually offer to kind of pick a date and time and throw that out there for people. I do want to let Chris finish out with what they have, because I know there's a couple of other complementary pieces that she can share with us. and because we are coming up to our 10 o'clock time. So Chris, you want to sort of round this out with the last of your pieces, but
Sure.
if anybody is interested, just chat in if you'd be interested in doing a separate meeting on this.
Sure. And I want to, like you said, I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. So the next couple of slides, I'm going to just touch briefly on. But if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email, phone, and then we can chat. Are you guys still seeing my slides, or did I lose that?
Nope, they're still there.
They're still there? There we go. So everyone is familiar with direct mail. So direct mail with digital enhancements is basically tying your direct mail with your digital components and using a campaign-based approach to make sure that the message across direct mail, you're doing paid advertising, you're doing social, is consistent. So let's just say, I'm just going to throw a simple offer out there, 30% off a product, and you promote that to your audience on direct mail. You want to have that same message go across your paid advertising, an ad on your social media. So that way, when a person visits, they get the direct mail piece. Let's say then they go to your social media or they see a paid ad. They're still seeing the consistency of that offer across the different channels. Because like I said, many people, before they even take that action, they're looking and researching across multiple different channels to learn more about your product and services. The other piece is that's very important that I don't want to overlook is marketing collateral. Printed materials that you can leave as leave behinds with your customers are very important because oftentimes they're going to reference back to them and read them. They're going to keep them. So it's important for them to have those leave behinds because you become less easily forgotten. And it's a lot of times these pieces have a phone number on them, have a contact number, and then that is that information that the person, when they're ready to take the next step, they have that information to do so. Here's some examples of marketing collateral. The other piece, and I only have a couple minutes, so I want to round this out, is creative engagement, both for your prospects and customers as well as your employees. So a good example I like to give is for prospects and customers. Say you have a customer that comes in and they have a dog, Fido, that they talk about Fido and they go on walks with Fido and it's a really big part of their life. It is very much an easy lift to write a handwritten note, find out what bones Fido likes, and either hand deliver it or mail it to them. So that way they get that handwritten note and it really shows that you're thinking about them. You took that extra mile to think about them, deliver something to them that is thoughtful and relevant to them. That goes a long way with building that relationship and being in front of them. The same thing with employees. Acknowledge the good work that they're doing. If it's something as simple as, and this is an example, say they're at a community and they're in the dining services and they know that Susie likes to have a flower on her plate a lot of the days. Well, if you see an employee go clip a flower, put a flower, or maybe make a flower on their plate with some like dessert decoration, acknowledge that. That is putting a smile on that customer, and that employee is taking that extra step, and you show that it shows that they care. So that is a great way to retain good employees and then also build the relationship with your prospects. here are some examples of things. Like I said, I was talking about handwritten notes or acknowledgement. These are some things that we have done for customers, and it can be anything from that handwritten note and a little bag of bones for Fido to a gift box or a gift bag. It does not have to be big, or it can be something more designed like this. But really think about that customer and prospect interaction to develop those relationships.
Nikki, I have to give the Alzheimer's Association a shout out on their fun marketing collateral that they give out every year. Last year, in light of COVID, you did some really cool things with the walk that were more, they were just totally different, out of the box things. And when I saw the visual that Chris just put up, it made me think of that. Yeah, you guys always do a really good job with your all your fun giveaways.
Well, and we do them on a shoestring because we are a nonprofit, but one of the other things we really are trying for is, you know, we've been trying to actually promote our brand outside of ourselves, in that we're creating, like for our walk team captains, our initiative this month for recruitment was to provide them with a digital collateral kit. So they have a Facebook frame, they have a digital email signature and things like that, that actually allow them to brand for us when they communicate. So that's one of the ways that we were trying to kind of partner with people to expand our reach a bit. And again, I think we could do an entire conversation of like Facebook and LinkedIn and the ways that we use them creatively. So definitely would like to look at that.
Okay.
I see we have a number of people jumping off. So at this point, are there any other questions for Chris?
I'll just have one comment we did a series of Facebook Live, and we did that with the University of Maryland system. So they had some behind the scenes gurus that would push things out, and I don't know the terminology, but they'd get a broader audience. But we have, and the videos still exist and people will still come and take a look at them, but we have multiple ones that the rehab team has done are over 100,000 views, which we were like, and people from all over the world. Sometimes we'll get, like, the marketing team will say, hey, there's an email from London and they just they had a question about, you know, and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, you know, and I direct someone from London to like what to look for in a therapist that would be in their area with that specialty. But people do really seem to like something that's very specific to whatever issue they have personally. So that kind of, but I'm just always like, oh my gosh, look at this. You know, we put this work in and 100,000 people have watched this video. So it's kind of cool.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank everyone for having me today. Hopefully that our time together was well spent and you have a couple ideas that you can think about and implement. And like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and we can either talk via email, phone, jump on a video. I am more than happy to discuss this all day long.